They thought Earth would be an easy conquest. They were wrong. The Galactic Empire had subjugated thousands of worlds. From the icy wastelands of Ortha, 6 to the sprawling metropolises of the Zarian Republic, every civilization that resisted was crushed beneath the Empire's might. Supreme Overlord Kales barely blinked at the idea of adding another primitive world to the long list of conquered planets. When Imperial High Command identified Earth as a new target, the invasion was planned with the same precision that had toppled 100 other civilizations. Earth was classified as a Category 3 world, a minor species with no interstellar presence, no significant fleet, and outdated technology. Intelligence reports suggested the humans relied on rudimentary fusion reactors and chemical-based weapons. Their ships had barely ventured beyond their own star system. To the Empire, this was not war. It was pest control. And yet, something about this operation felt different. As Overlord Kales watched the fleet projections, a gnawing sense of unease crept into his mind. Perhaps it was the eerie confidence with which the human leaders had responded to the Empire's ultimatum. Most worlds begged for mercy when faced with the power of the Imperial Armada. But Earth had simply responded with a single transmission. Come and try. Why didn't they surrender? Did they truly believe they stood a chance? The first wave of the invasion descended upon Earth in perfect formation. Thousands of warships, sleek, black vessels armed with plasma cannons and planetary assault modules, hovered over human cities, blocking out the sky. The Imperial Fleet Commander, Admiral Valoris, broadcast the standard surrender ultimatum, giving humanity one final chance to submit. No response. The fleet scanners detected no planetary shields, no orbital defenses capable of stopping them. The humans had nothing but outdated missile silos and primitive aircraft. This would be over before the day ended. Then, the first Imperial dreadnought exploded. Without warning, the Veilvar, a warship the size of a city, was ripped apart in a violent cascade of fire and debris. The explosion was so sudden, so complete, that the Imperial fleet scrambled to understand what had just happened. No enemy ships were visible. No energy signatures had been detected. One moment, the dreadnought was intact. The next, it was gone. Panic spread through the Empire's ranks. A second ship detonated, then a third. Within minutes, a dozen Imperial warships had vanished, torn apart by weapons they couldn't see. How are they doing this? Valoris demanded, his voice laced with fear. Where are the enemy ships? A junior officer's hands trembled as he studied the readings. Sir, we don't know. There are no enemy ships in range. That was when the first human transmissions began. Not a plea for mercy, not a desperate call for peace, but coordinated military chatter. Hostile fleet entering kill box. Execute strike pattern Zeta. Engage stealth units. Keep fire control locked until Phase 2. Confirming direct hits. Move to secondary targets. The humans hadn't been helpless. They had been waiting. Earth's defenses weren't outdated. They were hidden. Cloaked warships, concealed railgun platforms, and stealth satellites had remained dormant until the perfect moment. Now, the Empire's mighty fleet was caught in an ambush so devastating that they didn't even know where the attacks were coming from. As explosions erupted across the sky, Admiral Valoris' voice turned from confusion to terror. We need to retreat. Get us out of here. But there was no escape. The humans had anticipated every move, cutting off hyperspace routes and jamming communications. The Empire's fleet, so accustomed to overwhelming its enemies, had never been forced to fight blind. Overlord Kales watched from his throne room aboard the Imperial flagship, his fingers tightening around the armrest. This was no ordinary resistance. This was something else. A chill ran through him as he realized the truth. They had made a mistake, and now the humans were making them pay. The Empire came as conquerors. Now they were prey. Admiral Valoris had never experienced fear before. In all his years commanding Imperial fleets, he had led invasions against dozens of civilizations, each one more pathetic than the last. The mere sight of Imperial warships had been enough to force most species into submission. Those who resisted fell swiftly, crushed beneath the overwhelming firepower of the Galactic Empire. But this was different. His fleet was burning. His soldiers were dying. And worst of all, he still didn't know how. Human weapons, whatever they were, had obliterated the Empire's first assault wave. Entire warships had been ripped apart with pinpoint accuracy, yet the enemy remained unseen. No energy weapons, no missile trails, no visible ships, just silent, precise death. "Admiral," a frantic officer shouted, "our long-range communications are jammed. We can't call for reinforcements." "Sir, enemy forces are moving in," another voice cut in, panic thick in his tone. "We're detecting rapid acceleration. Unknown vessels incoming." Valoris turned toward the holographic display, his crimson eyes widening as new contacts appeared. Human warships, sleek, angular, and unlike anything Imperial intelligence had predicted. They were fast, faster than Imperial cruisers. They were coordinated. Their movements followed precise, calculated attack patterns. And worst of all, they were deadly. The first human warship decloaked just long enough to fire, a kinetic slug traveling at a fraction of light speed. The projectile tore through an Imperial battleship's hull, passing through it like a knife through soft flesh. No energy shielding could stop it. Another ship emerged from a void, firing in perfect synchronization. More direct hits. More Imperial ships falling apart. Valoris clenched his fists. This was impossible. A pre-spaceflight species should not be capable of this level of warfare. And yet, here they were, shattering an armada that had stood undefeated for centuries. How had Imperial intelligence failed so spectacularly? Had the humans lied about their capabilities? Or had the Empire's arrogance blinded them? The bridge shook as another explosion rocked the flagship. Valoris turned to his officers, his voice sharp and commanding. "Pull back. Fall back to orbit. We need to regroup." But the humans weren't going to let them retreat. Why would they? The hunt had just begun. Earth's response. Project Revenant. On the surface of Earth, deep within an underground command bunker, General Elias Carter stood with his arms crossed, watching the live battle feeds. The screens flickered with real-time data from orbital sensors, each one detailing the utter destruction of the Empire's forces. A younger officer beside him exhaled in disbelief. "It's actually working. We're winning." Carter didn't smile. This was only the beginning. The Empire had assumed humanity was defenseless. They had never learned about Project Revenant. For decades, Earth had watched as alien empires expanded across the stars, conquering weaker civilizations with impunity. Humanity had remained silent, hiding its true strength, knowing that one day the war would come to them. So Earth had prepared. The best scientists, engineers, and military minds had worked in secret, developing weapons designed to counter everything the galaxy had. Stealth warships, undetectable by conventional sensors. Kinetic weaponry, capable of bypassing energy shields entirely. Quantum disruption fields, jamming enemy communications and navigation systems. And now, for the first time, these weapons were being unleashed in full force. Carter turned to his staff. "Order all units to execute Phase 2. We take the fight to them." Across Earth's orbit, the hidden human fleet revealed itself. Thousands of warships emerged from concealed positions, some from the dark side of the moon, others from deep space stations disguised as asteroids. They had been waiting. Now they were striking back. The Empire had come to conquer. They were about to be annihilated. The death of an Imperial fleet. Admiral Valoris barely had time to react before the human fleet opened fire. Railgun slugs, hypersonic missiles, EMP warheads. The Empire ships, designed for planetary assaults, not large-scale fleet engagements, stood no chance against the brutal efficiency of human warfare. A plasma frigate tried to maneuver away, but was immediately speared through the center by a kinetic round. A command destroyer attempted to charge its main cannon, only for a human strike craft to detonate its power core with a well-placed precision strike. Within minutes, half the Imperial fleet was gone. Valoris' hands trembled as he stared at the wreckage. This isn't just an ambush, it's a slaughter. Then, a new transmission came through. Unlike the chaotic cries of his dying officers, this one was calm, cold. A human voice. Admiral Valoris. This is Fleet Commander Jason Hale of the United Earth Navy. Your forces are defeated. Surrender now, or we will erase your fleet from existence. The bridge fell silent. No one had ever dared to speak to an Imperial officer like that before. Valoris' pride screamed at him to refuse, to fight until the bitter end. But deep down, he already knew the truth. They had lost. He turned toward his officers. Prepare a surrender transmission. The ship shook violently, cutting him off. Warning alarms blared. The screens flashed red. The flagship's engines had been destroyed. Hale's voice returned, colder than before. That wasn't an offer, Admiral. It was a warning. There will be no surrender. You attacked our home. Now we're going to destroy yours. Valoris' eyes widened in horror. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were out for vengeance. What happens when Earth takes the fight to the Empire's doorstep? The Empire came to crush humanity. Now, they were the ones being hunted. Supreme Overlord Kales had never tasted fear. For centuries, he had ruled the Galactic Empire with an iron grip, leading conquests that spanned thousands of star systems. He had stood at the helm of wars that shattered entire civilizations, forcing them to bow before the might of the Empire. He had never considered defeat a possibility. Yet, as he watched the battle reports flood his command deck, Kales felt something foreign creep into his mind, a sensation that twisted in his chest like a parasite. Dread. The Imperial fleet, his fleet, was being annihilated. Not by some galactic superpower. Not by a coalition of advanced species. By humans. Creatures who, according to the Empire's intelligence, hadn't even mastered proper interstellar travel until recently. A species so primitive that they still used kinetic weaponry instead of energy-based arms. And yet, somehow, they had crippled the strongest military force in the galaxy. Kales gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus. The war wasn't over. Not yet. Status report, he demanded, his voice sharp as steel. His officers scrambled, their hands trembling as they worked. The holographic display in front of him flickered, revealing a brutal truth. More than 70% of the Empire's invasion fleet had been destroyed. The remaining ships were retreating in disarray, their formations shattered. Reports of human assaults on supply lines had begun flooding in, with multiple outposts going dark. Kales' fist clenched. How had the Empire's overwhelming power been so thoroughly undone? A thought slithered into his mind. What if Earth was never weak to begin with? What if they had always been waiting for something like this? His crimson eyes narrowed. Had the Empire just awoken a sleeping giant? On the other side of the battle, aboard the United Earth Navy flagship Titan's Wrath, Fleet Commander Jason Hale stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His gaze was fixed on the debris field where the Imperial fleet had once stood. We've shattered their first wave, his tactical officer reported. They're in full retreat. Hale didn't smile. Victory was meaningless if it wasn't complete. Good, he said. Now we take the fight to them. For too long, the galaxy had allowed the Empire to rule unchecked, to burn worlds and enslave civilizations without consequence. Earth had no illusions of diplomacy now. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about vengeance. Hale turned to his officers. Execute Operation Retribution. Across the fleet, commands were relayed in rapid succession. Earth's war machine began to move. Stealth ships, previously hidden within asteroid fields, now surged forward. Their mission? To sever the Empire's supply lines. Without fuel, weapons, and reinforcements, even the most powerful fleet would crumble. Special Forces teams, elite operatives trained for zero-G combat, infiltrated Imperial communication hubs across occupied space, spreading misinformation and causing chaos within enemy ranks. And then there were the fleet carriers. Massive warships, the size of small cities, now emerged from concealed positions beyond the Sol system. They carried not just fighters and bombers, but entire invasion forces. Humanity wasn't just repelling an invasion anymore. They were preparing to end the Empire itself. As the shattered remnants of the Imperial fleet fled toward their nearest stronghold in the Ruthless system, they expected time to regroup, to repair their ships, to call for reinforcements. They got none of it. The moment they exited hyperspace, waiting for them was another human fleet. How did they? The Imperial Admiral's words never finished. A kinetic slug fired from a human battlecruiser obliterated his flagship in one strike. Across the battlefield, the massacre continued. Human warships moved in like predators, striking down Imperial vessels before they had time to react. Fighter squadrons weaved between burning wreckage, tearing apart anything that tried to escape. One by one, the Empire's ships fell silent. The retreat had turned into a rout. The rout had turned into extermination. And the galaxy was watching. In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, representatives of the galaxy's most powerful species gathered to witness the war unfolding in real time. For years, many had secretly despised the Empire's rule, but had never dared to challenge it. The risk of annihilation had been too great. But now, on the holographic displays before them, the unthinkable was happening. The unstoppable war machine of the Empire was breaking. And it was breaking at the hands of humans. Whispers of fear filled the chamber. If the Empire falls, what happens next? What if humanity turns its weapons on us? Have we allowed a greater monster to rise? One council member, a reptilian elder from the Zorvith Dominion, turned to his peers. His voice was barely above a whisper. We have always feared the Empire. But now, I fear humanity even more. And perhaps, he thought, they should have. Back on Titan's Wrath, Fleet Commander Hale watched as the final remnants of the enemy fleet were wiped from existence. The first phase of the war was over. He turned to his officers. Prepare the next attack. We're going after their homeworld. A silence fell over the bridge. Calith Prime, the heart of the Galactic Empire, the most fortified planet in the known universe. Attacking it would be madness. But Hale's expression was unreadable. He wasn't planning an attack. He was planning an execution. Because the war wouldn't end until the Empire itself was nothing but ash. What happens when the hunters become the hunted? Can the Empire survive the coming storm? The Empire once believed itself untouchable. That illusion was about to be shattered. Deep within the heart of the Galactic Empire, the world of Calith Prime stood as an unbreakable fortress. Towering citadels stretched high into the planet's blood-red skies, protected by the most advanced defensive systems in the known galaxy. War fleets patrolled its orbit, legions of soldiers stood ready, and planetary shields flickered like an unbreachable dome of power. For centuries, Calith Prime had been the seat of imperial rule, untouched by war. No enemy had ever dared approach its borders. Until now. Because today, the sky would burn. The Empire's last stand. Supreme Overlord Kales stood on his command balcony, overlooking the vast cityscape of Calith Prime. Below him, thousands of war machines prepared for battle, and legions of elite soldiers were mobilized. And yet, none of it reassured him. A distant thunder rumbled across the sky, a sound unnatural and deep. The air itself seemed to vibrate with an invisible force. Then the alarm screamed. Kales turned toward the sky and saw them. Human warships, emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation, blotting out the stars with their sheer numbers. They had found the Empire's heart, and they had come to finish the job. The invasion begins. Fleet Commander Jason Hale stood on the bridge of the Titan's Wrath, his expression calm and unreadable. The United Earth Navy's full might was now assembled above Calith Prime. Every warship that had been hidden, every secret project, every black-budget prototype, it was all here. The war would end today. Hale turned to his officers. Fire. Across the fleet, rail guns ignited. Hypersonic projectiles, traveling at a fraction of light speed, rained down on Calith Prime's orbital defenses. Imperial battle stations crumbled in seconds. Shield generators flickered and failed under the relentless assault. And then came the drop pods. From the largest human warships, thousands of shock troopers descended onto the surface of Calith Prime, crashing through the Empire's defenses like meteors from hell. The ground war had begun. The fall of an empire. Kayles watched in horror as his once mighty defenses collapsed within minutes. How was this possible? His empire had ruled for millennia. It had defeated countless civilizations. Yet, in the span of days, humanity had reduced it to ashes. The battle below was a massacre. Human soldiers, wearing adaptive combat armor, moved through the ruined streets with terrifying efficiency. Every Imperial counterattack was shut down before it could even begin. Kayles turned to his last remaining generals. We must activate the Doomsday Protocol. If the Empire falls, we take humanity with us. A desperate plan. One final act of defiance. But before he could issue the order, the doors to his war chamber exploded inward. And through the smoke stepped a single human. The execution. The figure moved slowly, deliberately, as if he had all the time in the world. His armor was matte black, his helmet featureless, his weapons still holstered. Kayles realized, with a sinking dread, that this human wasn't a soldier. He was something far worse. Jason Hale stopped a few feet from the Overlord. Your empire's gone, he said, his voice cold. Your fleet is destroyed. Your armies are dead. Kayles bared his fangs. You think you've won? There will always be resistance. We are the chosen rulers of the galaxy. Hale tilted his head slightly. Then, in a single motion, he drew his sidearm. A single shot. A single body hitting the floor. And just like that, the Galactic Empire was no more. A new era begins. The war had ended. The Empire had fallen. Across the galaxy, planets that had once been enslaved now stood free. Species that had lived in fear now dared to dream. And humanity? Humanity had just proven a truth that the galaxy would never forget. They were not to be underestimated. They were not to be challenged. Because when Earth fought, it did not stop until its enemies were dust. What happens now that humanity reigns supreme? What will be the consequences of their victory? The war was over. The Empire was gone. But victory was only the beginning. Jason Hale stood in the grand war chamber of the fallen Galactic Empire, the lifeless body of Supreme Overlord Kayles cooling at his feet. The opulent throne room, once a symbol of absolute power, was now little more than a silent tomb. For centuries, the Empire had ruled with fear, crushing entire civilizations beneath its heel. It had believed itself eternal, unstoppable. And yet, here it lay, destroyed in mere weeks by a species the galaxy had once ignored. Humanity had won. But Hale knew the hardest part was yet to come. Because power never remains in a vacuum for long. The galaxy reacts. Across the cosmos, the fall of the Empire sent shockwaves through every known civilization. For some, it was a moment of liberation. Planets that had suffered under imperial rule for generations erupted into celebrations. Flags of the Empire were burned in the streets. Statues of Kayles were torn down, and long-hidden resistance groups emerged victorious. But not everyone cheered. The Galactic Council, a coalition of major species that had once operated under the shadow of the Empire, now faced an unsettling question. What happens when the most feared force in the galaxy is replaced by something even stronger? Representatives from dozens of worlds gathered in emergency sessions, their voices filled with uncertainty and fear. The Empire's tyranny has ended, one elder said. But are we simply exchanging one master for another? What assurances do we have that humanity will not claim the galaxy for itself? Another demanded. There was no answer, because deep down they all knew the truth. The fate of the galaxy now rested in human hands. Earth's next move. Back on Caliph Prime, Fleet Commander Hale stood before a holographic display, reviewing reports from across the war-torn galaxy. His officers waited in silence as he absorbed the information. Status, he asked finally. One of his admirals stepped forward. Enemy resistance has collapsed across all major sectors. Former Imperial forces are surrendering en masse. Dozens of species are requesting diplomatic talks with Earth. Hale nodded. And the Council? Unstable, the Admiral admitted. Some fear us. Others want alliances. Many are still trying to decide if they should resist or submit. Hale exhaled slowly. This was the moment that would decide everything. For centuries, the Empire had ruled through terror. Humanity would not make that mistake. But they would also not allow the galaxy to fall into chaos. It was time to reshape the stars. Hale turned to his officers. His decision was made. Prepare a transmission, he ordered, to the entire galaxy. The message heard across the stars. Within hours, every world in the known galaxy received the transmission. Holographic screens flickered to life on planets, space stations, and starships. And there, standing in front of the fallen Imperial throne, was Jason Hale. "This is Fleet Commander Jason Hale of the United Earth Navy," he began. His voice was calm, unwavering, undeniably powerful. "The Galactic Empire is no more. Its armies have fallen. Its fleets have been destroyed. Its reign of terror is over." A heavy silence fell across the galaxy. But understand this, Earth does not seek to rule. We have seen what tyranny does. We will not repeat the mistakes of the past. Tension rippled through the council chambers, through resistance groups, through the scattered remnants of the Empire. But, Hale continued, his tone sharpening, we will also not allow another war to consume the stars. We will not stand by while power-hungry factions fight to take the Empire's place. His eyes burned with quiet warning. Order will be maintained. Peace will be enforced. The message was clear. Earth would not conquer, but neither would they allow chaos. The old order was gone. A new era had begun. The rise of the human-led coalition. In the weeks that followed, humanity's influence spread like wildfire. Worlds that had suffered under the Empire pledged loyalty to Earth, eager to rebuild under its protection. Former Imperial governors surrendered, swearing allegiance in exchange for mercy. The Galactic Council, once an ineffective bureaucracy, now depended on human leadership to stabilize the shattered galaxy. And humanity? They had become something greater than conquerors. They were now the guardians of the galaxy. The first human-led coalition was formed. The United Galactic Federation. Not an empire, not a dictatorship, but a system where all species could rebuild under Earth's watchful eye. There were protests, of course, opposition, even threats of rebellion. But each time, humanity made its stance clear. Peace was the only option. And if anyone tried to threaten it, they would face the full strength of Earth's unstoppable war machine. A warning to those who would challenge humanity. Despite the overwhelming shift in power, whispers of resistance still echoed through the void. Former Imperial warlords, pirate factions, and rogue planetary leaders plotted in the shadows. Some still believed humanity could be overthrown, that Earth could be defeated. They were wrong, because humanity had already proven one undeniable fact. They did not start wars, but when provoked, they ended them permanently. And so, as the last remnants of the Empire crumbled and the new Galactic Federation rose, the galaxy watched, and they remembered. They remembered the day humanity was attacked. They remembered the war that followed, and they remembered the single unbreakable truth that had been seared into the stars. Earth was not to be challenged. But is peace truly possible? What will be the consequences of humanity's rise? Victory always comes at a cost. The question is, was humanity prepared to pay it? Jason Hale stood in the heart of Earth's new capital on Caliph Prime, staring out over a world that had once belonged to humanity's greatest enemy. Now it was the center of a new galactic order, one where Earth was no longer just another world in the stars. Humanity was now the single most powerful force in the galaxy. The war had been won, the Galactic Empire shattered, and the United Galactic Federation had taken shape. Planets across the cosmos now looked to Earth for guidance, protection, and leadership. But power was a burden, and Hale could already feel its weight pressing down on his shoulders. Because while the war had ended, the struggle for the future was just beginning. Unrest in the new order. Not everyone accepted humanity's rule. Across the galaxy, whispers of rebellion began to spread. Former imperial loyalists, crime syndicates, and ambitious planetary rulers who had once feared the Empire now saw an opportunity to seize power for themselves. In the dark corners of space, hidden warlords plotted in secrecy. And on the surface of Calith Prime, riots broke out in the streets. "Humanity is no better than the Empire," shouted alien protesters. "They say they bring peace, but they rule with force." Reports flooded in from intelligence networks. Resistance movements were forming. Small groups at first, but growing with each passing day. Some species still saw humans as invaders. Others feared that Earth would do what every great power before them had done: turn into the very thing they had fought to destroy. And deep down, Hale knew the danger was real. Power corrupts. It had happened to the Empire. It had happened to civilizations before them. Could Earth be any different? The councils divide. In the newly formed United Galactic Federation, tensions ran high. The alien representatives who had joined Earth's coalition were divided. Some, like the Trellians and the Vorsk, supported humanity's leadership, believing that Earth was the only thing preventing the galaxy from spiraling into war. But others, like the Zarkon Dominion, saw Earth as an occupying force. "This is not peace," the Zarkon ambassador hissed in one of the Federation's first meetings. "This is conquest under another name." Hale, standing before them, felt the pressure building. Was it possible to hold the galaxy together without becoming another empire? Or was war inevitable? The room erupted into debate, but Hale knew one thing for certain. Humanity had made enemies. And sooner or later, they would strike shadow in the dark. In the vast emptiness of deep space, a fleet gathered. Ships bearing no allegiance, no known origin, ghosts in the void. Their commanders were warlords, exiled generals, and criminals who had once thrived under imperial rule. And at their center sat a new leader. A figure draped in shadows, speaking through encrypted transmissions, rallying those who opposed Earth's rule. "They are not gods," the voice whispered across the dark networks of the galaxy. "They bleed like all others. They can be brought down." The message was clear. Earth's reign would not go unchallenged. Hale's decision. On Calith Prime, Jason Hale listened as his intelligence officers briefed him on the growing threats. "They're calling themselves the Phantom Coalition," his second-in-command reported. "Remnants of the Empire, mercenaries, and radical factions who refuse to accept Earth's rule." Hale's jaw tightened. He had expected resistance. But this was something more. "They've already begun attacking supply lines, sabotaging our communications. If we don't act now, they'll grow into a real threat." Hale considered his options. They could crush this rebellion before it grew, strike hard, wipe out their bases, and show the galaxy that Earth's rule was absolute. But that was exactly what the Empire would have done. Was humanity doomed to repeat the cycle? Or was there another way? Hale exhaled slowly, then made his decision. "Open diplomatic channels," he ordered. "I want to send a message." His officers exchanged uncertain glances. "Sir, with all due respect, you want to negotiate? With warlords and extremists?" Hale's expression hardened. "I want to give them a choice. Surrender and join the Federation, or face the consequences." And if they chose war, then humanity would remind them why the Empire had fallen. The final warning. Across the galaxy, a second transmission was sent. "This is Fleet Commander Jason Hale," the message began. "The United Galactic Federation stands for peace, for freedom, for a galaxy that no longer lives in fear." A pause. Then his tone darkened. "But make no mistake, Earth is not weak. We will not be threatened. We will not allow warlords, extremists, or remnants of the Empire to drag the galaxy back into chaos." He leaned forward, delivering the final words with cold finality. "You have one chance. Lay down your arms, or be erased." The message was sent. Now, all they could do was wait. A new era begins. Days later, the first Phantom Coalition stronghold was raided. Human forces, alongside allied species, struck deep into enemy territory, dismantling their command structure before they could fully organize. Some surrendered. Some fought to the bitter end. But the message was clear. Earth would not back down. As Hale stood on the bridge of the Titan's wrath, staring into the abyss of space, he knew that this was only the beginning. There would always be those who resisted. There would always be enemies lurking in the dark. But humanity had already proven one thing to the galaxy. They did not start wars. But when forced to fight, they finished them. And now, as the United Galactic Federation took its first steps into the future, the galaxy watched. Some with hope, some with fear. Because, for the first time in history, Earth was in control. Is peace truly possible, or is humanity destined for war? What comes next for the galaxy?